Cyclone Gabrielle has really been something, and in small island nations like the ones in Oceania, it really takes a toll on a substantial part of the land and population. And in today's video, I'm going to discuss what exactly that toll looks like, the science behind it, and how those affected are trying to heal from it. But first, if you've seen my videos before, I want to assure you that I'm really glad to see you back. If you haven't, I want to give you a warm welcome. Here at From Laura's Perspective, I post a new video essay on a different topic at least twice a week. Sometimes I discuss a current event, like I'm doing today. Other times, I share fun facts on something specific, discuss the evolution of a musical artist's lyrical themes and musical styles, relate what happened during a historical event, or break down the many layers of an aspect of our society and culture. On my channel page, you'll find that I've divided these into series and playlists so you can find the category of mine that interests you. But don't click out of my video to see that, and don't take my word for it. First, listen to me tell you all about Cyclone Gabrielle, which I'm about to start doing. First, I'm going to talk about the meteorology behind Cyclone Gabrielle. On February 5th, 2023, the Australian Bureau of Meteorology, or BOM, reported that tropical low 14U had developed within a monsoonal trough of low pressure over the northeastern Coral Sea, about 400 kilometers or 250 miles to the southeast of Honiara in the Solomon Islands. Once the storm moved to the Australian region, the region's low vertical wind shear and warm sea surface temperature allowed the storm to further develop. This was only enhanced when it moved towards Queensland, Australia, and eventually got to the point where the BOM declared it a Category 1 cyclone and named it Gabrielle. The cyclone slowly drifted southwards while deep convection consolidated, and the cyclone was upgraded into a Category 2. Gabrielle continued to intensify, and by 6 p.m. on February 9th, she'd gone up to a Category 3. When the cyclone moved into Met Service's area of responsibility on February 10th, Met Service downgraded it to a Category 2 tropical cyclone. On February 11th, after Gabrielle had passed directly over Norfolk Island, the BOM and Met Service reported that Gabrielle had weakened into a deep subtropical low. Now let's talk about the consequences of this natural disaster. New Zealand is the country that has been most affected by Cyclone Gabrielle, but Melanesia and Norfolk Island are also suffering because of Gabrielle. Heavy rain and wind warnings were issued for across the North Island of New Zealand as Gabrielle approached the country, including red heavy rain warnings in Northland, Auckland, Coromandel, Gisborne District, and Hawke's Bay, and red wind warnings in Northland, Auckland, Coromandel, and Taranaki. On February 9th, states of emergency in place in Auckland and Coromandel as a result of earlier floods were extended in anticipation of Gabrielle's arrival, while a precautionary state of emergency was declared in Northland on February 12th. Many residents across the upper North Island who had been affected by earlier flooding prepared themselves for the cyclone, while emergency services were on high alert. Residents were warned that power cuts were likely, and it was suggested that people withdraw cash from their bank accounts because electronic payment systems would not work in a power cut. Air New Zealand canceled many domestic and international flights as the cyclone approached, while Bluebridge and Inner Islander canceled Cook Strait ferry crossings. The Ministry of Education advised Auckland schools to close, but the decision remained with individual boards of trustees. All schools in Taranaki were closed on February 14th. Severe flooding occurred, while some buildings had their roofs torn off in the wind or were damaged by landslides. Numerous roads across the North Island were closed due to flooding and high winds, including Auckland Harbor Bridge. Hundreds of people across the North Island were forced to evacuate, while hundreds more evacuated voluntarily. An estimated 10,000 people were displaced as a result of the cyclone. 365 claims of injuries were accepted by the Accident Compensation Corporation, or ACC. On February 23rd, there were 6,960 reports of people who could not be contacted. Hundreds of police staff worked on locating these people, and by March 7th, they were all found. Now let's talk about what Cyclone Gabrielle has done to Melanesia. Landslides and mud ravaged Malpoi, a village in the Vanuatu island of Espiritu Santo, leaving many houses and gardens completely destroyed and contaminating the water supply. Some villagers in the disaster-affected areas were also forced to evacuate. In New Caledonia, strong swell warnings were put in place for 16 districts. 14 boats were damaged and one sank due to winds and swells, leading to an evacuation plan for the damaged ships. And what about Norfolk Island? Well, this territory was placed under a red alert as Gabrielle approached, with the center of the storm forecast to pass over or close to the island. Australian military and emergency personnel were on standby and ready to respond. The Emergency Management Norfolk Island, EMNI, sent out a warning on Saturday afternoon advising people to stay inside and announcing that most businesses would close. On February 11th, Gabrielle passed directly over Norfolk Island. Although the cyclone brought down trees and disrupted power, there were no reports of further significant damage. Norfolk Island's emergency controller, George Plant, said there had been 40 calls for help, but the damage was, quote-unquote, manageable. So how have the affected communities been dealing with all this destruction? When Cyclone Gabrielle died down, the New Zealand government allocated 50 million New Zealand dollars to support businesses in the primary sector and $250 million to assess and fix the roads that were damaged in the cyclone. All of this is in addition to the 11.5 million New Zealand dollars Prime Minister Hipkins personally delivered to support New Zealand communities devastated by Cyclone Gabrielle. On February 17th, the New Zealand government requested that Australia send a team of 25 impact assessment experts to aid with disaster relief in New Zealand, to which Australia agreed. Around February 19th, the National Emergency Management Agency deployed 60 Starlink internet devices, while the Royal New Zealand Navy dispatched the HMNZS Canterbury with supplies and equipment to build temporary bridges. The Royal Australian Air Force deployed a C-130 Hercules as part of the international relief effort. On February 23rd, the New Zealand police said they had conducted 507 prevention activities in the North Island's Eastern District on February 22nd, including reassurance patrols. During that time, they received 597 calls from the public, including 6 burglary reports, 11 unlawful takings, and 38 family harm incidents. Police said they had arrested 35 people, 24 in Hawke's Bay and 11 in Gisborne, for various offenses including car conversion, serious assaults, and burglary. On February 23rd, the government ordered a ministerial inquiry into forestry companies' slash practices, which had exacerbated flood damage caused by Cyclone Gabrielle. The forestry industry's practice of stockpiling discarded branches and offcuts had damaged buildings and land during the flooding. The inquiry will be led by former National Party cabinet member Hikia Parada, former Hawke's Bay Regional Council Chief Executive Bill Bayfield, and forestry engineer Matthew McCloy. Several political and civil society leaders, including National Party leader Luxon, the Forest Owners Association President Don Carson, Green Party co-leader Shaw, and fellow Green MP Eugenie Sage, and Forestry Minister Stuart Nash supported calls for an inquiry into the forestry industry's practice and accountability for flood damage from forestry companies. Perhaps the most important thing that's being done about Cyclone Gabrielle is that the New Zealand government is now incorporating managed retreat into its climate change adaptation bill and disaster response policies. Thank you all so much for watching. As climate change gets worse and worse, so do natural disasters such as Cyclone Gabrielle. In a time like this, it's important to know about current events so that we understand how the world is changing around us. This is just one of the many things I discuss in my videos, which comprise an entire video essay library. To get a card to that library, all you have to do is subscribe. If you're still not yet sure you want to do that, click some of the links on your screen to see more of what my channel's like. I really hope you'll do that, and that I'll see you next time, which will be to learn about something tightly tied to the music industry.